everybody, Mark, aka the Nerdy Punk, back again today for a new video. Hope you guys are doing well. Happy Friday, everybody. As David Lynch would say, can you believe it? It is a Friday once again. Of course, had to throw in a David Lynch reference there. Rest in peace to the legend, of course. Today, what I wanted to talk about is the Oscar nominations, which dropped yesterday morning, Thursday, January 23rd here of 2025. And I'm a pretty big fan of the Oscars. I watch every year as a movie fan, and I usually follow it quite heavily. This year, less than others. I've just been kind of busy lately, and I haven't been as locked into the Oscars as I normally am, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect yesterday. And I think this year, just in general, for the Oscars, is a little bit of a weaker year, and it's kind of more of a wide open race for most of these categories, which is actually kind of exciting because, usually I tend to know what's going to win almost every category before it even happens. So I like the mystery that's involved. But there's also some controversy here. So I will start right off the bat with my thoughts on the biggest controversy from the Oscars this year, and that is Emilia Perez. So Emilia Perez is the most nominated film at the Oscars this year. It got 13 nominations. And to put that into perspective, that's what Oppenheimer got last year. Oppenheimer got 13 nominations. And of course, it won Best Picture. And most films that have gotten at least 13 nominations have gone on to win Best Picture. So it is already thrust itself into the Best Picture conversation, regardless of whether we want to admit it as cinema fans or not. So I put off watching this movie for a long time. I had heard, really negative things about it, and that didn't really make me excited for it. However, on paper, this movie seems like something that I would really love. It's a film that takes a lot of bold swings. It's a film that's been very divisive. And for a large portion of my life, some of my favorite films that I've ever seen have been divisive films. Some of my favorite art, just in general, in all kinds of forms, have been divisive. So I was intrigued by this one, and I put it on last night, because of the nominations. I had to watch it. And I gotta say that I really do understand the criticisms of Emilia Perez. And I really didn't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about Emilia Perez, but I have to because it is the most nominated film at the Oscars this year. And I don't want to talk about it because, the last thing that the internet needs is another cis white man talking about Emilia Perez. Like, this movie is not made about my life experiences, and that's fine. I don't need to see, movies about people exactly like me to enjoy them. In fact, some of my favorite films are not about people like me, right? I think of myself as a very empathetic person and that I can relate. And, I have many friends in the trans community. I have, as an educator, I've had students in the trans community, and I like to think of myself as someone who, even though that's not my lived experience, I have a decent amount of knowledge, even though I can never fully understand what it's like to be a trans person, that I think of myself as someone who understands at least more than the average person about that experience, or at least I try to, And this film, it's done the unthinkable. It's somehow gotten both transphobes and trans people united in their hatred for this movie, as well as people from Mexico and their hatred for this film, because this film takes place almost exclusively in Mexico. So I think on paper, this film sounds like it's going to be great. But the red flags start to show up very quickly. And it starts with the filmmaker behind it. Jacques Audiard is the director of this film. He is another cis white man. He's a French person. And he's someone who doesn't even speak Spanish. And yet he wrote the screenplay in Spanish. And the screenplay is really, I think, pretty egregious. Again, somebody who does not speak Spanish. I took some Spanish in high school. I know a few words here or there, but I do not speak Spanish. And I've never been to Mexico. So I don't fully understand that. Just because I don't have that experience in life. But from the people that I've heard talk about this, who are from Mexico, who speak Spanish, they've said that this translation, this screenplay, is really bad. Like, the accents and dialects are off. The actual phrasing of the text, the dialogue, is really off. And I'm obviously going to take them at their word for that. I think Jacques Audiard, when I've kind of looked into this film, I haven't seen any of his other films, so this is my only opinion of him based upon this film. And from what I've heard about him and the making of this film, he did very little research about the trans community and about Mexico when he made this film. And I think that's a major problem. If you're going to write a movie about these experiences and about this culture, about this community, and you're not even going to try to research this community, to consult with people from these communities, I think that's a major problem to start with. And my biggest problem with Emilia Perez is that the way it depicts these communities, again, as an outsider, right? I don't have that experience, but as an outsider, the way it depicts these communities, I think, is almost hurtful to these communities. And, everything from perpetuating stereotypes about both Mexico and the trans community and trans people, and very negative stereotypes at that. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I'm sure there are people on YouTube who have made much better videos than me. This film got 13 nominations. It is not worthy of 13 nominations. There are so many categories where it stole nominations from other films that were way more deserving for those particular categories. And even putting aside all of the loaded, political conversation about this film, putting all that aside, it's not a good movie. Like, it's just objectively not. I would be interested to hear thoughts from someone who is a fan of this film. If there are any of you watching this video, no judgment at all. Art is subjective. You're allowed to like a movie, just like I'm allowed to not like a movie. But I cannot understand why people would vote for this movie. The best thing about it is Carla Garcia Gascon. She is the first trans woman to be nominated as a actor for the Academy Awards, and I think that is really good. I think that's progress. I'm happy to see some representation, and she is really good with what she's given, but my problem is with what she's given. Like, this script, this plot lines, the musical aspect of it, the songs are awful. And they're, in some cases, hurtful in terms of perpetuating some of these stereotypes. There's all of this focus, the most infamous song in the film. I'm not really spoiling much here because it's all over the internet. The penis to vagina song. Like, that song is so obsessed with, like, body parts, and, like, that is not what being transgender is about. Like, it's about what's going on in your brain. It's not about your physical biology. And again, this is coming from an outsider. The last thing I would want to do is to say something wrong and get something wrong here and end up adding to these stereotypes. So I apologize if I do get anything wrong here, but from what I know about that experience, that is not what it's about. And there's all kinds of dead naming in this movie, and it's just a really icky film, I think, for watching it. And it's just not good. Like, I don't understand the voting. And I'm going to kind of wrap up my thoughts on Emilia Perez here because I don't want to go too long here. But the best case scenario here, what I'm thinking in my brain is I'm trying to put myself in the heads of these Oscar voters. And it seems like Oscar voters, these Hollywood elites, and I hate even using that phrase, these people that are voting for this movie, my best explanation, giving them the biggest benefit of the doubt here, is that they're voting for this film because of the subject matter. And of course, in the United States today, we're dealing with a lot of transphobia, a lot of xenophobia, a lot of hatred towards people that are not, white dudes. And I think really my assumption is people are voting for the film as kind of a fuck you to all that stuff. And I think that's a really good impulse. I agree with that impulse. I just don't think this is the film to do it with. And I think, if anything, it's kind of setting these movements back a little bit further by really heaping this praise onto this particular film. And I really just think we're going to look back on this in a few years and think this is one of the worst Oscar misses of all time, right up there with movies like Green Book and movies like Crash. I've heard a lot, although I have not seen Crash. I have seen Green Book, and it's not as egregious as this, but it's pretty bad for a Best Picture winner. So that's my thoughts on the whole Emilia Perez situation. I hope I didn't offend anybody with my thoughts, but that's my experience with this film. Other things that I wanted to talk about. So some of the biggest snubs of the day. So Challengers, obviously everybody has been talking about. Challengers was a movie that I was lukewarm on when it first came out. I watched it in the theater, and there were things that I really liked about it, and there were things I didn't really like as much about it. But the more that film has sat with me over time, I've liked it even more. And I'm very anxious to revisit that one. I really need to get to that, because I think I will really love this film once I rewatch it again. And even from the beginning, in my opinion, one of the best things about this film is that score. And the fact that they wouldn't even nominate the score. Like, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were robbed of a score nomination, and instead we get Emilia Perez, which has terrible music. Nonetheless, okay, we're leaving that one behind in the past. Other snubs, some of them, not as egregious, but like Margaret Qualley for The Substance, very disappointed that she did not get a supporting actress nomination. I thought that she was deserving of it, but overall for The Substance, very good day. And The Substance is, one of my favorite movies of the year. It's been the movie that I feel like I'm going to bat for the most this year. And it got 5 nominations, 4 of them in really major categories. So I'm very excited for that. It also got a Best Picture nomination. And when I saw The Substance, I actually, in my movie review for it, I said, this thing will not get Oscar love. And I'm frankly surprised, and very happily surprised, that it gets a Best Picture nomination, and that Demi Moore gets a Best Actress nomination, because she is incredible. I was thrilled to see her win the Golden Globe, and her speech was phenomenal. Other snubs, Sing Sing did not make the Best Picture cut. So Sing Sing picked up a couple surprise nominations, but it missed out on Best Picture. And that's a film that I still haven't seen, in large part because A24 really destroyed this movie. Like, what A24 did, especially to Sing Sing, but also in part to The Brutalist, they won't let us see these movies. They refuse to release them to wide audiences. I live in a very rural area, but we get most A24 movies, and we get most Oscar contenders, but I have had no ability to watch Sing Sing or The Brutalist since they've come out. And A24 did that really stupid thing where they released it in a couple theaters in the summer, then they pull it, and then it's been, MIA for like 6 months, and then they're going to put it out. They say a wide release. Not a wide release. Like, you have to be in a major city to see this movie, and I think that's a really big problem, and I'm a big A24 fan. I love A24, but I think this was one of their biggest misfires here. I think Sing Sing could have been a Best Picture contender. The Substance, sorry, going back a little bit here. The Substance did miss out on a sound nomination, and it did not make the short list, so we knew that was coming, but that is a travesty. I think the sound design is one of the best parts of that movie. And then, of course, the big snub as well, Denis Villeneuve once again denied a directing nomination. And instead, they choose to nominate Jacques Audiard, once again, Emilia Perez, and then they nominate James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. And no hate to James Mangold, but he did not deserve that nomination. Denis Villeneuve, if you compare their work, compare A Complete Unknown, then watch Dune Part 2. And if you still think James Mangold had a better achievement in directing, I don't know. I don't know what to say to you, because Denis Villeneuve filmed arguably, I think, one of the best scenes of the past 5 to 10 years. Maybe the best scene, one of the best scenes in sci-fi movie history, with the famous sandworm, rioting scene. That is unlike anything I have ever seen in a movie theater. And I don't know what this man has to do to get a Best Director nomination. Like, they snub him for the original Dune, and they snub him for Part 2. And I don't understand it. Dune kind of feels like the film bro movie that the angry white guys are talking about on the internet. And I don't consider myself part of that group. But I think, you're really missing the boat if you think Denis Villeneuve is not worthy of a director nomination. And then another very expected snub was Lily Rose Depp for Nosferatu. I think her performance in that movie is really special. I did not expect her to have a prayer of getting a nomination, just because the Academy appears to hate horror so much. That's why What the Substance did is so impressive. But yeah, they'll give Nosferatu a few crumbs, some technical category nominations, but they won't give it any director love or any performance love. And that's also, I think, a travesty, because Lily Rose Depp is special in that movie. Other best actresses that I would have loved to see, I haven't seen the film, but I've heard amazing things about Pamela Anderson in The Last Showgirl. I really want to see that movie soon. Of course, she did not make the cut. And Nicole Kidman for Baby Girl, a movie that I have seen that I really enjoyed, and I thought Nicole Kidman was great. Not a snub that I'm really thinking is egregious or anything, but I would have liked to see her get that nomination. The biggest surprises, other than The Substance, that I was really happy about was Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan getting nominations for The Apprentice. That movie appeared to be just dead in the water for such a long time. It had the famous legal battle, prior to the election, and it's a film with very, difficult subject matter to deal with and difficult to market. But both Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan were amazingly impressive in that film. And I'm happy to see them get nominations. The worst nominations, aside from all of the Emilia Perez stuff, like I said, I think that film deserved 2 nominations, both for Gascon and for Zoe Saldana. I think Zoe Saldana was good. But the other 11 nominations, I don't think it deserved one bit. Wicked and Emilia Perez taking score nominations from challengers and another film that could have been honored. The Wicked one is less egregious in my opinion, but it's a musical, and they refused to nominate Dune Part 2 for score because they used some of the elements from the first movie, so it's not an original score, but yet they take Wicked, which takes music from Broadway adaptation, and it puts it into the movie, and all of a sudden that's an original score. Like, how do we define original score? If we're not going to nominate Dune, I don't think they should nominate Wicked. And to me, the soundtrack is what's great about Wicked. The soundtrack is phenomenal. I love the soundtrack, but that's not the same as the score. So why are we nominating it? I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like they see a movie they like and they're like, check. And then finally, A Complete Unknown for screenplay. Not the most egregious nomination there, but I just feel like the screenplay is not a strength of that movie. I really think A Complete Unknown, it's a biopic that I liked. And biopics, tend to struggle, and I tend to not like them as much as I would like to. But the best things about A Complete Unknown are Timothée Chalamet and the music, right? The Bob Dylan music. Once again, the soundtrack. The other aspects of the film are fine. I think it's a serviceable film. But to me, like, you're not going to get much out of A Complete Unknown unless you already like Bob Dylan. It's not doing anything that's super special. So if you love Bob Dylan like me, you're going to really enjoy the film. And I did. I really enjoyed it. But if you don't already love Bob Dylan, I don't know why you would watch A Complete Unknown, because there's really not a whole lot that adds in terms of the artistic value there. So I'm going to try to kind of wrap up my thoughts. I've been kind of ranting for a little while here, but I had some opinions about the Oscars this year, and had to kind of voice them. So again, I hope, I never want to start, controversy or arguments or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to do. So I hope, that nobody watching this was offended by any of my takes. But that's just, that's my view of the Oscars. We're all entitled to our own views about what happened. So, going forward, it's going to be an interesting Oscar race. I'm excited to see it, and I will be watching the ceremony, of course, on March 2nd. So I will have some more thoughts, some predictions for who I think is going to win the Oscars. So stay tuned for that as we get closer to the ceremony. We got about a little over a month till that happens. So stay tuned on the channel. Hit the subscribe button down below if you would like to see more content, and I will catch you guys later. Have an awesome weekend. See ya.